Hey guys, tonight we're diving into the strange, exhausting, and oddly charming world of Victorian women's dressing routines. Imagine this: you're blinking awake in a chilly bedroom, the pale light of a London morning just starting to seep through the heavy drapes. Outside, the city's already alive with the clip clop of carriage wheels and the soft clatter of street sweepers. Inside your room, it's quiet except for the creaking floorboards. As a maid tiptoes in with a steaming pitcher of water and a basin, setting it down carefully as if afraid to wake you fully. Your breath fogs in the cold air. There's no central heating, of course. No cozy duvets or fleece throws either, just a scratchy wool blanket and a prayer you didn't catch a chill overnight. The morning ritual begins with a splash of icy water on your face, the kind that makes you gasp involuntarily. You shiver as you reach for the stiff linen towel, your fingers numb. Historians still argue whether this harsh start to the day was a matter of practicality or just a lingering badge of virtue, a reminder that discomfort like corsets builds character. You glance at the clock on the mantel, barely 6 of Uzuzendro a.m. The day stretches ahead like a marathon you're only half prepared for. There's a faint knock, and in comes your maid, bustling with quiet efficiency. She's holding a corset long and pale with rows of tiny hooks and laces that seem to multiply every time you blink. You know what's coming. Before you even leave the bed, there's the business of the chamber pot, yes, the oh so glamorous reality of Victorian life. You try not to think too hard about the fact that your entire household knows your business in a very literal sense. And as you swing your feet to the floor, the cold of the wooden board shoots up through your legs like a shock, making you momentarily forget you're supposed to be a genteel lady of leisure. The mirror catches your eye, an oval with a carved frame slightly warped, so your reflection looks both regal and vaguely haunted. You rub at the smudges under your eyes, remnants of yesterday's coal dust and the ever-present grime of city life. Your hair is a mess, flattened on one side, an explosion of tangled curls on the other. Victorian beauty ideals might prize a smooth, controlled appearance, but your hair is already plotting its rebellion. With a sigh, you start the process. First comes a shift, a thin white cotton undergarment that's supposed to protect your outer clothing from sweat. Sweat is such an indelicate word, isn't it? The Victorians preferred to think of themselves as glistening at most, though the reality was far less poetic. The shift goes on over your head, bunching uncomfortably at the shoulders, and you can already feel it tugging at your skin as you move. Next, the stays. You stand with arms outstretched as the maid begins the time-honored ritual of lacing you in. You feel the tug sharp, insistent as the corset tightens around your ribs. The air whooshes out of your lungs in a startled gasp. The whalebone supports creak ominously, and you try not to think about the fact that your internal organs are being ever so slightly rearranged. The maid gives the laces a final pull and ties them off with the efficiency of someone who's done this 1,000 times before. Breathe in, miss, she says, though you're fairly certain that's impossible now. You try to speak, but your voice comes out in a strange high-pitched squeak. It's fine. You don't really need to breathe deeply today, right? Just a few shallow sips of air will do. There's a particular smell to the morning cold air mixed with coal smoke from the fireplace, the faint scent of lavender water dabbed on your wrists, and the subtle musk of starched fabric. It's a scent that says you're ready to face the world, or at least ready to sit decorously in the parlor and pretend you're not slowly being crushed by your own clothing. Your arms feel stiff. Your neck aches a little. The corset is doing its job, pulling you into a shape deemed fashionable by society, even if it feels like you're one misstep away from toppling over entirely. You catch a glimpse of your reflection again and think, well, I look the part even if I can't exactly breathe. Outside, you hear the sounds of life picking up the milkman's cart, rattling by the distant calls of a newspaper boy hawking headlines about Queen Victoria's latest health scare, and the soft clink of the gardener's shears as he tends to the rose bushes out front. You're not quite ready to join them yet. There's still so much more to put on, more layers to wrestle into place, and you're already wondering how anyone made it through a day like this without collapsing in a faint. But for now, you're upright, sort of. One breath at a time, you steady yourself because the day is just beginning and you probably won't survive this if you don't pace yourself. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And if you're watching from somewhere cozy, tell me your location and local time in the comments. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You blink, take in the quiet around you, and the day of a Victorian woman, your day has only just begun. Now that you're standing there, swaddled in your shift and corset, it's time to face the next challenge. The endless layers of undergarments. You shuffle awkwardly as your maid retrieves the next item, a pair of bloomers. They're white, voluminous, and to be honest, make you feel a bit like a swan with legs. Victorian bloomers aren't exactly glamorous. They're more like knee-length tents, gathered at the waist and cuffs designed to preserve modesty, but succeeding mostly in making you feel a bit ridiculous. The fabric rustles as you step into them, the soft cotton cool against your skin. There's a peculiar sensation as the ties are fastened snug but not too tight, because you'll need room to breathe, or at least the illusion of it. Historians still argue whether bloomers were purely practical or a subtle rebellion against the era's obsession with modesty. After all, these garments were a recent innovation, just a few decades old, and for some, a scandalous nod to rational dress. For you, they're just another thing to deal with before breakfast. Next comes the chemise, a simple sleeveless gown, thin as a whisper, meant to protect your skin from the scratchy corset and the scratchy petticoats and, well, everything else. It's like a buffer zone between you and the rest of the world. You lift your arms as the maid pulls it over your head, the fabric settling around you like a soft sigh. The chemise is plain, but maybe, just maybe, you've got a little embroidery along the hem, your initials perhaps, or a discreet floral motif if you're feeling fancy. And now, the petticoats, plural. The first petticoat is light, a bit like a slip. The second is heavier, trimmed with lace at the hem, meant to add volume and swish. The third? Well, that one's the real monster, a stiff starch thing that rustles like leaves underfoot in autumn. You feel your hips expanding outward with each added layer, your silhouette slowly transforming into the coveted hourglass shape of the time. You try to walk, taking a careful step forward. The petticoats sway, brushing your ankles like gentle waves, but there's also a slight drag, a weight, that makes you acutely aware of every movement. The floorboards creak beneath you, your steps measured and deliberate. And then there's the debate that lingers like an invisible fog. Were all these layers about fashion, or were they a way to reinforce the idea that a woman's place was stationary, delicate, ornamental? Historians still argue, and as you shuffle toward the mirror, you wonder the same. Your maid fusses over the drape of the fabric, smoothing wrinkles with a practiced hand. You glance down and notice a faint stain near the hem of one petticoat, a smudge of soot maybe from the fireplace. It's a reminder that even in a world obsessed with cleanliness and purity, the dirt of daily life sneaks in. The smell of starch hangs in the air, mingling with the faint scent of beeswax from the polished floorboards. It's not unpleasant, but it's certainly distinct in aroma that would probably make you think of laundry days, bustling servants, and the quiet hum of domestic life. Your maid retrieves a pair of cotton stockings, the fabric smooth and slightly cool. You sit gingerly, balancing on the edge of a chair as she rolls them up your calves. The stockings are held in place by garters, which she ties with an efficient little bow. You flex your feet experimentally, your toes barely wiggle. Button boots wait nearby, black leather gleaming faintly in the dim light. They look deceptively simple, but as you know all too well, they're a test of patience. The buttons are tiny, the loops stiff, and you wonder again why no one has invented a faster way to get dressed. Maybe the Victorians just liked the process, the ceremony of it all. Or maybe they had no choice. Your maid helps you into the boots, buttoning each loop with a special hook, the tiny tool clicking softly like a metronome. One button, two, three. You lose count after a while, staring out the window at the gray sky, wondering if it's going to rain later. It probably will. The damp seems to soak into everything here. At last, the boots are on your legs, encased from knee to toe, and you feel like you've just completed the first leg of a very long relay race. You're upright, but not quite triumphant. The weight of the layers is starting to register, a subtle pull on your shoulders, a tightening around your waist, a sensation of being encased like a very well dressed mummy. And yet you know this is only the beginning. You glance at the clock again, barely 7. There's a full day ahead, visits to be made, letters to write, maybe a little embroidery if you're feeling ambitious. But for now, you take a shallow breath and let your gaze drift across the room. The wallpaper, faded floral patterns, a little worn at the edges. The porcelain basin still half full of water. A vase of drooping flowers on the windowsill, petals curling inwards like they're trying to hide from the world. Outside, the world hums along. A dog barks in the distance. A carriage rattles past. The maid murmurs softly, smoothing a wrinkle in your petticoat, her hands moving with quiet precision. You feel a sense of resignation, maybe a flicker of amusement, because honestly, you probably won't survive this, at least not without a few blisters and a lot of sighs. But onward you go. The day waits and you're not quite dressed yet. The corset, you realize, is not just a garment, it's a battle. And as you stand there pinned and puffed and slightly lightheaded, the true struggle begins, the art of tight lacing. You catch the maid's eye in the mirror and she gives you a look that says, brace yourself. She begins the slow, deliberate ritual, each tug of the laces pulling you tighter, reshaping your body inch by inch. The sound is almost hypnotic, the soft swish of the laces sliding through the eyelets. The occasional creak of the whalebone stays bending under pressure. There's a moment where you feel your ribs protest, just a little twinge, and you wonder, not for the first time, how your internal organs feel about this whole situation. The goal, of course, is that elusive hourglass figure, a silhouette so prized in Victorian society that women endured fainting spells, bruised ribs, and even organ displacement to achieve it. Historians still argue whether tight lacing was an act of personal choice, societal pressure, or some combination of both. Some claim it was all about control, shaping not just the body but the behavior of women, making them dependent on assistance, unable to move freely, a sort of fabric leash wrapped in silk ribbons. Others say it was simply fashion, no different than high heels or skinny jeans, just more extreme. You can't help but marvel at the contradiction. Victorian women were expected to be delicate and fragile, yet their daily routine required an iron will, a tolerance for discomfort that would make a modern marathon runner wince. Your breath comes in shallow, measured sips now. There's no room for deep inhales. Your lungs are compressed, your diaphragm squeezed. The maid asks you to lift your arms and you do so, feeling the corset shift slightly, a pressure that feels both supportive and suffocating. The corset in all its structured glory is a marvel of craftsmanship. The fabric is sturdy, the stitching meticulous, the boning precise. Some corsets are even embroidered, tiny delicate patterns sewn in like secret affirmations. Maybe yours has a little rose motif near the edge, something no one else will ever see, but it makes you feel a bit more elegant as you stand there, a living sculpture in fabric and bone. Your stomach rumbles softly, of course it does. Eating is a tricky thing when your middle is cinched tight. There's a reason Victorian meals were often small and carefully timed. You'll need to be strategic about when you eat, what you eat, and how much you eat, unless you fancy the idea of indigestion while trying to smile politely at afternoon tea. You feel a slight dizziness creep in a gentle sway like being on a ship. The maid steadies you with a practiced hand, murmuring reassurances as she ties off the laces at the back with a neat bow. You're done for now. There's a peculiar sense of accomplishment, isn't there? Standing there, you feel both fragile and invincible, like you've completed a strange rite of passage. The corset holds you upright, back straight, chin lifted even as your ribs whisper protest. You try a tentative step, feeling the tension across your midsection, the slight pressure under your bust. It's not exactly comfortable, but it's manageable. For a moment, you allow yourself to imagine life without a corset, just soft, loose clothing, no pressure, no constriction. But then the thought drifts away, replaced by the quiet knowledge that this is how it's done, how it's always been done, and who are you to argue with tradition? Your maid steps back, surveying her work like an artist admiring a half-finished canvas. She adjusts the fit, here smooths a wrinkle there, and gives you a small, satisfied nod. The whale bones have done their job. You've been sculpted into the ideal shape, even if it feels like your lungs are competing for limited real estate inside your chest. Outside, the city hums along. A bell chimes somewhere, maybe the bakery down the street, maybe a passing tram. The scent of coal smoke lingers, mingling with the faint aroma of lavender sachets tucked into your wardrobe. You notice the faint ticking of the clock on the mantle each second, a quiet reminder that the day marches on and you still have layers to go. You glance at your reflection once more. Your waist looks impossibly small, an illusion created by careful shaping and a tolerance for discomfort. There is a strange sense of pride in it, though, a tiny triumph in the face of a system designed to demand patience and compliance. You wonder if the other women at the afternoon tea will notice, if they'll give you a subtle nod of approval. A silent, "You did it too, didn't you?" Your maid moves to tidy up the dressing area, folding discarded garments with the precision of someone who knows exactly how much work still lies ahead. You take a careful step, feeling the corset hold. You support you and restrain you all at once. And just as you start to adjust the sensation, just as your body begins to accept this new compressed reality, your maid reappears holding the next challenge with an almost conspiratorial smile. It's the bustle, the metal frame that will transform your silhouette once again. But that's a problem for later. For now, you stand tall, or as tall as you can, a Victorian woman caught in the quiet struggle between fashion function and the relentless ticking of the clock. You barely had time to adjust to the corset, squeezing your ribs like a stubborn hug when the maid reappears, bustling toward you with the next item, a contraption that looks suspiciously like a small collapsible bird cage. It's the bustle, and as she lifts it up with a slight grunt, you can't help but stare at it in mild disbelief. It's made of lightweight metal padded with fabric and shaped to sit right at the back of your waist, extending outward like the framework of a miniature bridge. There's an undeniable absurdity to it, a metal cage that'll hold your skirts up in a grand flowing arc, as if you're some kind of mobile art installation. You stand still as the maid fastens the ties, adjusting the position until the bustle perches securely behind you, swaying gently like a bird's tail. The idea, of course, is to create an exaggerated hourglass silhouette. Victorian fashion, it seems, is a game of visual trickery. The corset pinches the waist, the bustle inflates the back, and together they make you look impossibly narrow in the middle and impressively extravagant from behind. Historians still argue whether this obsession with silhouette was purely aesthetic or a subtle signal of wealth and status, a way of saying, "Look, I have the leisure to wear something completely impractical, and I need help just to get dressed." You shift your weight experimentally, and the bustle shifts with you, a gentle bounce that feels both elegant and slightly comical. The maid straightens it with a practiced hand, ensuring it's perfectly aligned, as if the slightest tilt might collapse your entire look. There's an art to balancing the bustle too high, and you look like you're smuggling a small dog under your skirts. Too low, and it drags awkwardly like a deflated balloon. Your skirts will eventually cover it all, of course, but for now you can't help but feel like a walking architecture project. The sensation is strange. There's an airy lightness to the metal, but also a certain rigidity, like wearing a portable shelf strapped to your back. You glance at yourself in the mirror again. From the front, you still look vaguely normal. Corseted, yes, but still recognizably human. From the side, though, you resemble a teapot, or perhaps a camel with an extra hump. It's an odd, almost comical effect, and you suppress a small, breathless laugh, though the corset immediately reminds you that laughter is a luxury best reserved for the unlaced. The maid is already moving on, retrieving the next petticoat that will drape over the bustle, adding volume and softness to disguise the metal framework. The layers keep coming, and you start to wonder if anyone has ever counted exactly how many individual pieces go into a proper Victorian outfit. It must be dozens. The bustle isn't just about fashion, of course. It's also a subtle statement, an architectural marvel designed to turn your body into a symbol of status, of femininity, of control. There's even a curious side note that some women used to hide small personal items inside the hollow space: a fan, a love letter, maybe a small flask for emergencies, a secret compartment hidden in plain sight. The maid adjusts the fabric, smoothing it over the bustle's curve, her fingers moving with the quiet confidence of someone who's done this hundreds of times. The fabric swishes and sighs as it falls into place, the sound oddly soothing. Outside, the world continues, horses clip-clopping on cobblestones, distant church bells tolling the hour, the muffled voices of street vendors hawking fresh bread and paper fans. It's a reminder that while you're here encased in fabric and bone and metal, the city carries on unconcerned by your personal battle with gravity and social expectations. You take a careful step, feeling the slight bounce of the bustle behind you. There's a moment of awkwardness as you adjust your balance, but the maid steadies you with a soft hand at your elbow. You glance down, watching as the layers of petticoat swirl gently around your ankles, the faint scent of soap and starch rising with the movement. The weight is starting to build now, a subtle pressure on your hips, a reminder that every layer you add makes the day's movements a little slower, a little heavier. It's a performance, really. Every step, every turn, every gesture is rehearsed and measured, like a slow motion dance choreographed by society itself. You pause for a moment, feeling the soft weight of the bustle and petticoat settle around you. It's oddly calming in a way, this moment between steps, between layers, where you're neither fully dressed nor fully at ease. The day stretches ahead, a long winding path of fabric and expectations, and you're just trying to keep your footing. The maid steps back, surveying the effect with a critical eye, and you catch her faint smile in the mirror's reflection. You feel a flicker of satisfaction. Yes, it's ridiculous, this contraption strapped to your back, but you've made it this far. You've balanced the teetering architecture of Victorian fashion, and for a fleeting moment you feel like you're winning. But there's no time to linger. The clock ticks on, the day waits, and you're still far from ready to face it. The next challenge is already waiting: stockings, shoes, and that first blessed cup of morning tea. And so you breathe in shallowly, lift your chin, and prepare for whatever comes next. You try to savor the moment, standing there, half buried in fabric and a web of laces and metal frames, when the maid arrives, holding yet another small mountain of necessities: stockings, boots, and mercifully a teacup, its thin porcelain trembling slightly in her hand as she places it on the side table. You sit gingerly, careful not to crush your bustle like a poorly folded umbrella, and stretch out a leg as the maid kneels to fit the stockings. They're fine cotton, maybe silk if you're lucky, the weave tight and smooth against your skin. She rolls them up your calves with the practiced touch of someone who's done this 1,000 times, her fingers deftly adjusting the seam to run perfectly straight up the back of your leg, a detail that seems both trivial and all important in this world of relentless appearances. The stockings are secured with garters, little ribbons that fasten snugly around your thighs. They're supposed to be discreet, but you know there's an entire unspoken language tied up in these details, a certain bow color here, a particular knot style there. Historians still argue whether garters were simply practical, or if they carried quiet flirtatious undertones, the kind of thing a lady might hint at during an afternoon tea, a subtle raise of the eyebrow that only the observant would catch. Your feet, now wrapped in the snug embrace of the stockings, are ready for the boots. And oh, the boots, those lovely, frustrating little prisons of leather and buttons. They wait at your feet, shining darkly in the soft light, looking deceptively simple. They're ankle high, with delicate stitching along the seams and more buttons than any rational person could want to deal with before breakfast. The maid picks up a button hook, a slim metal tool with a little curve at the end, and starts the delicate work of closing each button. It's a rhythm slide, the hook through the buttonhole, catch the button, pull it through, repeat. 1, 2, 3. By the 10th button, you've stopped counting and started wondering if this is some elaborate joke by the universe. Your toes feel cramped, almost immediately squeezed into the narrow, pointed tips of the boots. You try wiggling them experimentally, a futile little dance that earns you a small, sympathetic smile from the maid. These boots aren't made for running, heavens no. They're made for standing gracefully at just the right angle, for sitting with ankles demurely crossed, for gliding elegantly across polished floors. The smell of leather mingles with the faint scent of your tea cooling rapidly in the cup, its steam curling lazily into the air. You reach for it with gloved fingers, taking a cautious sip. The tea is warm, comforting, a soft floral blend that's meant to soothe the nerves, but really just reminds you that breakfast is still hours away. You hold the cup delicately pinky, slightly raised, because, of course, that's how a lady holds a teacup, isn't it? Outside, the world continues its slow, steady hum. You hear the faint clatter of a carriage passing by, the rhythmic clip-clop of horses' hooves, the muffled shouts of street vendors hawking fresh bread ribbons, and because it's Tuesday, a shipment of exotic lemons that just arrived from somewhere impossibly far away. You pause, taking a small, careful sip of tea, feeling the heat pool on your tongue. It's a brief moment of peace, though. The corset reminds you not to get too comfortable. The tightness a constant companion now, a gentle squeeze. With every breath, a reminder that your body is not entirely your own today. The maid hands you a pair of gloves. Soft, kid leather, butter smooth, and so snug that you have to wiggle your fingers like a puppet just to slide them on. They're a pale cream color, the kind that will show every speck of dirt or dust. But that's part of the game, isn't it? Clean gloves say you're refined, that you have someone else to handle the messy things. Gloves with smudges. Well, that might suggest you've been doing something unseemly, like writing letters, or heaven forbid, handling money. You glance down at your hands now, gloved folded neatly in your lap. You look the part. Almost. The boots are buttoned, the stockings smooth, the corset laced, the bustle balanced. But the day's dressing ritual is far from over. There's still the matter of your hair, the jewelry, the outer gown, and the carefully selected accessories that signal to the world exactly who you are. The clock on the mantel ticks on each second, a soft nudge that time waits for no one, not even a lady caught in the middle of her elaborate daily transformation. You glance at your reflection in the mirror, the teacup warm in your gloved hands, and you can't help but smile just a little, just enough to feel like you're in on the absurdity of it all. The layers, the laces, the bows and buttons, it's all part of a quiet performance, and you're the star of the show whether you like it or not. With the sigh, you take one last sip of tea, now lukewarm, and set the cup down with a soft clink. You flex your feet once, twice, feeling the pressure of the boots against your toes, and stand as gracefully as you can manage. The bustle sways behind you, the corset holds you firm, and the stockings cling to your legs like a second skin. You're dressed well almost. There's still the matter of your hair, and that you know is a saga all its own. You glance at the mirror again, but this time your eyes settle on the real battlefield, your hair. And oh, what a battlefield it is. You exhale softly, steeling yourself because you know this will take time. The maid stands behind you, hairbrush in hand, her expression calm, but with a hint of quiet resignation. She knows what she's in for. Your hair after a night of tossing and turning is a tangled masterpiece. It's a wild mess of waves, frizz, and knots, as if you spent the night fighting invisible foes in your dreams. You feel the tug almost immediately. The brush catches on a particularly stubborn knot, and you wince. Hold still, Miss the Maid murmurs, though you both know it's easier said than done. The brush moves methodically, each stroke smoothing the strands into something resembling order. There's a rhythmic sound to it, bristle against hair, soft thumps, as she works through tangles. The occasional sigh, when a particularly stubborn section refuses to yield. The smell of hair oil drifts into the air, maybe a hint of lavender or rose of faint sweetness that softens the process. Victorian hairstyles are no joke. You're expected to have long, thick, lustrous hair, preferably in soft waves or carefully arranged curls. If your hair doesn't naturally comply well, that's what rag curls are for: damp strips of cloth twisted into sections of hair tied up tightly and left to dry overnight. You remember the discomfort of sleeping in them, the strange lumps against your scalp, and the way your head felt like a pincushion by morning. Historians still argue whether the elaborate hairstyles were a sign of wealth, a reflection of societal expectations, or simply the aesthetic ideal of the time. But as the brush works through another knot, you think it might have been a form of patience. Training, a daily reminder that beauty in the Victorian sense is a long, slow process. The maid pulls the hair into sections, now carefully parting it down the middle. Your scalp tingles with each precise stroke. She begins braiding the lower layers, tight, neat plaits that will serve as a foundation for the curls and twists to come. The braid feels snug, pulling gently at your temples, a quiet reminder that even your hair must be tamed into submission. There's something oddly soothing about the process, though. The repetitive motion of the brush, the soft tug of the braid, it's like a gentle rhythmic lullaby if you ignore the occasional sharp twinge when a knot refuses to give way. The maid starts pinning sections up the hairpins, vanishing into the thick mass like tiny metal secrets. There's a satisfying little click each time a pin slides home, the sound oddly final, like a punctuation mark in the symphony of your morning routine. And then there are the fringe debates. Should you wear your hair up entirely or leave a few delicate curls to frame your face? Some say soft tendrils are charming, a hint of softness in an otherwise rigid style. Others argue they're untidy, a sign of careless grooming. You settle for a compromise, a few loose wisps tucked behind your ears, just enough to look effortless without actually being effortless. As the hair takes shape, you notice the little details, the faint sheen of the oil, the way the light catches on the braids, the soft whisper of the hairbrush against your scalp. It's an intimate, almost meditative ritual, except for the growing ache at the base of your skull where the braids pull tight. You glance at the small dish of hairpins, each one curved like a tiny question mark, and wonder how many will end up tangled in your hair by day's end. Probably all of them. There's also the quiet, unspoken reality that if your hair refuses to cooperate, if it's too thin, too short, too unruly, there are always hair pieces. False braids, curled fringes, even entire hair rats made from the collected strands of your own combings. They're tucked discreetly into styles, padding volume, adding shape, helping you achieve that perfect Victorian silhouette. It's a small secret between you and your mirror, a little borrowed luxury to smooth over the imperfections. Your hair is starting to resemble something out of a painting, now braids coiled like ropes, soft curls pinned. Just so, the whole creation held together by a precarious network of pins and prayers. You move your head slightly, feeling the weight shift. A gentle tug here, a subtle pull there. It's not exactly comfortable, but it's secure. Outside, a soft drizzle begins to fall. You hear it tapping against the window pane, a quiet, steady rhythm that matches the brushing and pinning inside. The city beyond blurs in the fog, a world of gray and brown, and the occasional flash of bright umbrellas. Your maid finishes with a final flourish, stepping back to admire her handiwork. You tilt your head slightly, inspecting the results. It's intricate, controlled, and honestly a little exhausting, but it's what's expected and you're used to it by now. You flex your neck, feeling the stiffness settle in, and offer the maid a faint smile. She nods already, turning away to fetch the ribbons, the combs, the tiny fabric flowers that will decorate the crown of your hair like a miniature garden. The day isn't done dressing you yet, not by a long shot. But for now, you sit quietly listening to the rain and the distant sounds of life outside your window, and let the weight of your hair settle like a gentle tangled crown on your head. The maid returns with an armful of tiny treasures: silk ribbons in soft pastel, slender combs with delicate carvings, a scattering of fabric flowers, and maybe, if you're feeling particularly ambitious today, a small glinting hair ornament shaped like a butterfly. It's time for the finishing touches, the little flourishes that transform a braided and pinned mass of hair into something that whispers of elegance and refinement, even if it's secretly built on a foundation of hair oil and frayed nerves. You sit still, barely daring to breathe, as the maid begins weaving ribbons through the braids. They thread like soft rivers, slipping between the twists of your hair, tied into small bows that sit just so above your ears. The ribbons are pale pink today, delicate feminine, and chosen to complement your complexion. Or perhaps chosen to match your mood, though Victorian etiquette frowns on too much boldness in accessories. Historians still argue whether hair ribbons were merely decorative or subtle statements of personality and rebellion, little pops of color in an otherwise restrained palette. Your head tilts gently as she works, the faint tug of the ribbon threading through hair, a reminder of how much patience this all requires. You think about the hours spent each week tending to your hair, not just today's routine, but the constant care washing with rainwater and egg yolk, soap, combing out tangles, oiling the ends to prevent split hairs, and always guarding against the frizz that threatens to ruin everything in damp weather. The combs come next, their teeth sliding into place with a satisfying little click. They nestle into the braids like tiny anchors, holding everything in place. At least that's the theory. You know full well that by mid-afternoon at least, one will have worked its way free, sliding slyly down the back of your neck at the most inconvenient moment. The fabric flowers are arranged carefully at the crown of your head, white and pale blue. Today, a gentle nod to modesty and softness. There's a delicate scent of rose water as the maid leans in to adjust a particularly stubborn curl. And for a brief moment, the world feels oddly still, as if you're frozen in a painting. And then, just when you think you're finished, the maid pauses, her brow furrowed. Perhaps a little extra fullness here, she murmurs, retrieving a small secret weapon, a hair rat. It's a padded roll usually made from old combings of hair, meant to discreetly add volume beneath the surface of your carefully sculpted updo. She tucks it into place, a hidden puff that gives your hair a gentle lift. You feel a mix of emotions, relief that the style is coming together, and a quiet, resigned humor at the absurdity of it all. Here you are, a grown woman sitting still while someone builds an elaborate, semi-architectural structure on your head, like a slightly floral tinged Jenga tower. You can't help but wonder what future generations will think when they look back at these hair rituals. Will they marvel at the artistry, or shake their heads at the sheer amount of effort it took to look natural in Victorian society? You catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, braids and ribbons and pins, an intricate crown that makes you look both regal and a little bit weary. There's a strange satisfaction in it, though. It's a performance, sure, but it's also a quiet expression of care, a daily reminder that beauty in this world is a thing you build layer by layer, even if it takes half the morning and the patience of a saint. The maid steps back, tilting her head slightly, and gives a soft nod. "That will do, miss," she says, as if the hair has declared itself complete. You stretch your neck gently, feeling the soft pull of the braids, the subtle weight of the combs, the faintest tension from the ribbons tied just a bit too tightly. You know this style will hold mostly. There's always the risk of a stray pin working loose or a sudden gust of wind unraveling an hour's effort. But for now, you're ready. You rise slowly, careful not to tilt your head too much, and the hair sways gently with you like a fragile crown balanced on a breath. The corset reminds you with a quiet squeeze that there's still more to the day's preparations, but for a moment you allow yourself to feel composed. Outside, the sounds of the street drift in the distant clatter of hooves, a vendor shouting about fresh oysters, the muffled chime of a nearby clock striking the hour. You wonder briefly if any of those people hurrying along with their errands know just how much effort is required to look like you've barely tried. The ribbons, the combs, the hairpins, they're all in place now, tiny markers of the hidden labor that goes into each day. And as the maid reaches for the jewelry box, you know the next layer of the performance is about to begin. Your hair, at least, is finished. For now, you're still catching your breath from the hair ordeal, figuratively, of course, since your corset has reduced actual breath to a shallow affair, when the maid lifts the jewelry box with a small reverent gesture, as if presenting the crown jewels themselves. The box creaks softly as she opens it, revealing a collection that glitters in the dim morning light. There are brooches, lockets, rings, and tiny pins nestled into the velvet-lined interior, each piece humming with a story. You select a simple cameo first, a small oval creamy white against black carved with the profile of a Roman goddess. It's pinned neatly at your collar, a subtle nod to the classical ideals so popular in Victorian times. Historians still argue whether these cameos were simply fashionable or if they also signaled a woman's education, her knowledge of history and art, a quiet intellectual wink hidden among the lace and ribbons. Next comes a pair of delicate earrings, perhaps pearls today, or maybe garnets for a pop of color. They dangle just enough to catch the light, but not so much as to seem too flashy. You feel their gentle weight as they sway against your neck, a constant faint reminder that beauty in the Victorian sense is never quite effortless. There's a locket too, a small heart-shaped charm on a fine gold chain. It feels cool against your skin as the maid fastens it, the clasp clicking shut behind your neck. You know what's inside, a tiny folded lock of hair, perhaps from a loved one, or a small pressed flower from a long-forgotten day. Victorian women were sentimental creatures after all, and there was always a story tucked into the jewelry. And then, the mourning brooch. A heavy dark piece set with jet, its surface carved into delicate swirling patterns. You hold it for a moment, the weight sinking into your palm, and wonder how many women wore this as a quiet tribute, a badge of grief pinned over the heart. The Victorians were masters of mourning, their entire culture laced with rituals and objects dedicated to remembering the dead. You pin it in place, a silent gesture of respect for lost, even if you're not in mourning yourself today. The maid arranges the pieces with care, adjusting the chain so it lies flat, straightening the brooch so it sits perfectly centered. There's an almost military precision to it, everything in its place, every piece telling a part of your story. You glance down at your hands where delicate rings gleam softly in the light. One might be a gift from a suitor, though of course you'd never admit that aloud, while another might be a family heirloom, its band worn smooth by generations of fingers. It's easy to forget as you sit here surrounded by these small glittering objects that each piece carries meaning. A bracelet might signify your coming of age, a hairpin might be a token from a friend, and even the simplest brooch might whisper of love lost or loyalty. It's a secret language spoken in pearls and jet, in gold filigree and tiny seed pearls sewn into fabric. You tilt your head slightly, watching the earrings sway, and wonder how many times you've worn them before. You think about the weight of it all, not just the literal weight of the jewelry, but the symbolic burden. Each piece a silent declaration: I am refined. I am cultured. I know my place in this world. Your reflection in the mirror is a quiet portrait now, hair neatly arranged, ribbons fluttering, jewelry perfectly positioned. There's an air of soft elegance, a suggestion of quiet wealth, a message sent to the world without a word spoken. The maid, ever efficient, moves to tidy the jewelry box, closing it with a soft snap. You watch her hands, noting the faint ink stain on her thumb, a reminder that she too carries the marks of her own labor, even if they're different from yours. Outside, a breeze stirs the curtain, bringing in the faint scent of coal smoke and damp earth. The street hums with life, the distant shout of a fishmonger, the rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the soft clatter of carriage wheels over cobblestones. And you sit there draped in silk and pearls, a silent participant in the ongoing performance of Victorian womanhood. The day is moving forward, and soon it will be time to dress for the morning visit, the carefully orchestrated social dance that requires its own specific costume. But for now, you let your fingers brush lightly over the locket, the cameo, the cool, smooth surface of the brooch, and you feel the quiet weight of it all. You are dressed in more than just fabric and pins. You are dressed in history and meaning, in the unspoken codes of a world that demands so much for so little. The maid waits, hands folded ready for the next layer, and you, corseted, coiffed, and adorned, draw a shallow breath and prepare to stand. The morning visit calls, and you must answer. With your hair secured, your jewelry glinting quietly in the soft morning light, and your corset holding you firm in its gentle vice, you finally rise carefully, mind you, and prepare for the next stage, dressing for the morning visit. This isn't just a matter of throwing on any gown that catches your fancy. No, a lady's outfit must match the occasion, the time of day, and even the level of formality expected by the person she intends to visit. There are unspoken rules, layers of silent etiquette woven into every stitch of fabric. And today you'll be receiving a lady's visit, a friend from across the square perhaps, or a distant cousin with whom you share exactly three things in common: tea, gossip, and a mutual dread of the latest fashion columns. Your maid presents the chosen gown, a walking dress in soft, muted tones, perhaps dove gray, or a gentle rosewood with modest trimmings along the bodice and cuffs. The fabric is fine wool or perhaps a sturdy cotton blend, chosen for practicality as much as style. You know the drill, bold colors are for later in the day, more formal visits. Morning calls demand restraint, modesty, and a kind of understated grace that says, yes, I am a lady of means, but I don't feel the need to shout it from the rooftops. The gown is an ordeal in itself. Your maid lifts it carefully, guiding it over your head as you raise your arms, mindful of the delicate arrangement of your hair. The fabric brushes over your shoulders, cascading down in soft, heavy folds that settle around you like a well-behaved pet. The sleeves are fitted, buttoned with tiny pearl-like fastenings that seem designed to test your patience. The skirt is wide, flaring out thanks to the bustle support, and the bodice fits snugly over the corset, pressing you into a shape that feels less like a human and more like an exquisite porcelain figurine. There's a faint, almost imperceptible sigh from the gown as it settles in acknowledgement perhaps of the day's expectations pressing down on your shoulders. The scent of the fabric lingers, a hint of starch, a whisper of lavender sachets tucked into drawers, and the ever-present subtle aroma of coal smoke that clings to everything in the city. Your gloves are retrieved next in kid leather, the palest cream so soft they almost melt into your skin. You slide your hands in carefully, fingers stretching, flexing slightly. The gloves are snug as they should be, though you know they'll warm and loosen with the heat of your skin. You glance at your hands now, properly gloved, and there's a faint, peculiar sense of satisfaction. You are armored in a sense, ready to step into the world. The parasol comes next, a dainty, collapsible thing with a carved handle just large enough to shade your face without being so large as to seem ostentatious. It's not exactly for protection from the sun, let's be honest. London's skies aren't exactly blazing, but it's a symbol. It says, I am delicate, I am refined, I care about my complexion. Even if, as you suspect, the real threat to your skin is less the sun and more the ever-present smog. And of course, the gloves and parasol are only part of the visual equation. There's the tiny, absurdly small handbag, more an ornament than a practical item dangling from your wrist. It holds almost nothing, a folded handkerchief, perhaps a visiting card, and maybe a small coin or two. It's not meant for utility. It's meant to say, look at me, look at how little I need to carry because I have people to do that for me. Historians still argue whether these accessories were purely decorative or if they signaled something more, an unspoken code of status, wealth, and leisure. After all, the very act of being able to not carry your own things was a declaration of privilege. You take a careful step forward, the weight of the gown shifting around you. The skirt sways gently, the bustle giving it shape, and you catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror, refined, composed, and thoroughly encased in layers of fabric, expectation, and social performance. The maid adjusts a final detail, a ribbon at your throat, a small neat bow that rests just below the cameo, and steps back with a nod of quiet approval. You feel like an exhibit, a carefully curated display of what it means to be a Victorian woman of status. There's a knock at the door, a soft, polite tap-tap that signals the arrival of your visitor. You draw a shallow breath because deep breathing isn't really an option right now, and glide toward the door with as much ease as the corset, bustle, and boots will allow. Your footsteps are measured, your posture straight, your chin tilted just enough to seem approachable but not too familiar. This is a performance after all, and you are the star. The day has only just begun, and already you are layered in clothing, meaning and expectation, ready to exchange pleasantries over lukewarm tea while balancing the weight of an entire world on your shoulders. As you step into the hallway, parasol in hand, you can't help but think, you probably won't survive this without a few wrinkles in your gloves and a deep, abiding appreciation for the art of patience. The visit is over at last, and you step back into the quiet of your sitting room, the faint echo of polite conversation still ringing in your ears. You sink carefully onto a chair, the corset pressing into your ribs, the bustle tilting awkwardly behind you, and for a fleeting moment you wonder how anyone ever found this comfortable. But there's no time to linger in thought. The clock ticks on, and it's already past noon, which means it's time for yet another transformation, the afternoon tea gown. The maid arrives once again, bustling in with a new garment draped over her arms, a gown that whispers of softness and ease. Though let's be honest, ease in Victorian fashion is a relative term. This tea gown is a flowing affair cut looser than the walking dress, with a high lace collar and sleeves that flutter slightly at the wrists. It's often made from lighter fabric, a soft muslin perhaps, or a fine wool in a delicate floral pattern. You feel the flicker of relief as the bodice of the tea gown slips over your shoulders, settling with a soft sigh against your skin. It's looser, yes, but only compared to the vice grip of your morning ensemble. You still feel the corset's constant presence underneath, a quiet, insistent squeeze, reminding you that comfort is a luxury, not a guarantee. The gown drapes around you like a soft curtain flowing down over the bustle, which of course remains firmly in place. The idea is to give the illusion of relaxed elegance. Oh, this old thing. Just something I threw on for tea, while in reality it's yet another carefully curated look designed to convey wealth, taste, and a delicate understanding of the social codes that dictate every hour of your day. You catch a glimpse of yourself in the mirror as the maid adjusts the folds of the fabric, and for a moment you do look softer, almost ethereal, like a figure in a painting by Rossetti or Burne-Jones. The tea gown has a way of draping over the body in gentle sweeping lines, a visual sigh in a world of tight bodices and stiff collars. Historians still argue whether the tea gown was a symbol of feminine independence, a rare moment of comfort in a day of rigid structure, or simply another performance, a costume change for a different scene in the endless play of Victorian life. Some women, after all, wore tea gowns in private, a quiet rebellion against the formalities of public dress. Others treated them as yet another expectation, another layer in the delicate web of appearances. As you settle into the soft fabric, the maid fetches your slippers, dainty things with soft soles and satin ribbons that tie around the ankles. They're not made for walking far, of course, just for gliding across polished floors, perhaps pausing near the window to gaze pensively at the rain. Your gloves come off now, fingers flexing in quiet relief, and you feel the faint imprint of the seams along your skin. The parasol is set aside, the small handbag tucked onto a side table, and for a brief, blissful moment you are unburdened, at least mostly. You breathe a little easier in the tea gown, though easier is relative. The corset still reminds you of its presence with every movement, but the looseness of the gown allows for a subtle exhale, a quiet expansion of the chest that feels almost luxurious after the rigid confines of the morning dress. The tea tray arrives, a silver affair with a gleaming pot, delicate cups, and a plate of small crumbly biscuits that promise more mess than satisfaction. You lift a cup with careful fingers, pinky angled just so, and take a sip. The tea is warm, slightly floral, a blend meant to soothe the nerves and fortify the spirit. Outside, the afternoon light slants through the window, catching on the lace curtains, turning them into a filmy glowing screen. The rain has slowed, leaving behind the faintest scent of damp stone and earth, a reminder that the world continues its quiet turning regardless of your corsets and bustles. You let your gaze drift over the room, the polished wood of the furniture, the embroidery hoop resting half finished on a side table, the faint reflection of the fire's glow in the mirror. It's a scene that looks serene, peaceful even, but beneath it hums the constant undercurrent of labor. The dressing, the pinning, the measuring of every movement, every breath. Your maid moves quietly in the background, smoothing the tea gown where it has bunched slightly at the hem, her hands deft and practiced. You feel a flicker of gratitude, though you know you'll never say it aloud. Gratitude, like so many things in this world, is an unspoken transaction woven into the fabric of your daily life. And so you sit draped in soft fabric, the tea warm in your hands, the rain a soft murmur against the window, and you allow yourself a brief, quiet moment of stillness. It won't last long. There's still dinner to prepare for and another gown waiting in the wardrobe. But for now, the tea gown whispers of gentle respite, a pause, and the endless ritual of dressing a reminder that sometimes, even in the strict world of Victorian fashion, you get to breathe. Just a little. You sip the last of your tea, the cup warming your gloved hands, and for a brief, fleeting moment, you allow yourself to believe the day's work is nearly done. But as you set the delicate porcelain down on its saucer with a soft clink, you catch the maid's quiet movement, retrieving something from the chair by the window. It's the parasol, of course, and the fan, and because the Victorian era demands it, the absurdly tiny handbag that seems better suited to holding a single sugar cube than anything useful. The performance must continue, and every accessory plays its part. The parasol is a delicate thing, cream-colored silk stretched taut over slender ribs, its carved wooden handle polished smooth from years of gloved hands gripping it lightly. It's less for shielding you from the rare bursts of sun and more for the aesthetic, an emblem of gentility, a prop that transforms your simple act of standing into a studied pose of refinement. You open it carefully, the silk sighing as it unfurls, and you practice holding it at just the right angle, tilted over the shoulder, not too high, not too low, like a lady in a painting frozen in a perpetual moment of leisure. The fan is next, a small ivory frame piece with delicate painted flowers and gilt edges that shimmer faintly in the afternoon light. You hold it loosely, fingers poised just so, practicing the lazy flick, open, the slow, deliberate flutter, and the soft snap shut. It's a language in itself, this fan, a way to communicate moods and intentions without saying a word. Historians still debate whether the so-called language of the fan was a real codified system or simply an elaborate Victorian fantasy. Either way, it's an art form in your hands, and you try not to drop it as you give it an experimental wave. And then there's the handbag, or rather the reticule as it's called in proper circles. It's so small it feels like a joke, a tiny pouch of silk or beaded fabric that might hold a lace-edged handkerchief, a calling card, and little else. Practicality has no place here. The reticule exists purely to complete the ensemble, a dangling ornament that whispers, I am so above the concerns of daily life that I need not carry anything of real consequence. You loop it over your wrist, feeling its faint weight tugging at the crook of your elbow. Standing in the mirror now, you look every inch the proper Victorian lady, parasol in one hand, fan in the other, reticule dangling like an afterthought. Your hair gleams under the soft afternoon light. Your corset holds you in its quiet, constant grip, and the tea gown sways gently with each careful step. It's also carefully choreographed, this dance of accessories, this subtle balancing act of form and function. The parasol to shield the fan, to flirt the reticule, to hint at leisure, each item a brushstroke in the grand portrait of Victorian femininity. The sound of rain returned soft and steady, now tapping against the windows in a slow, soothing rhythm. Outside, the streets gleamed dark with wet cobblestones, the world painted in shades of gray and glistening reflections. The air smells faintly of damp earth and smoke, a reminder of the city's pulse beyond the walls of your sitting room. You take a careful step forward. Parasol, tilted fan, resting against your palm, the reticule swinging lightly as you move. The skirts of your tea gown swish softly around your ankles, the bustle giving a gentle bounce with each step. It's a strange sensation, this layered existence, so much fabric, so many rules, and yet here you are performing it all without a word of complaint, or at least without a word that anyone will hear. The maid watches quietly from the corner, her eyes tracking your movements, ready to adjust a ribbon, a hem, a wayward pin. You wonder for a moment what she thinks of all this, the layers, the accessory, the endless hours spent shaping a body into an acceptable silhouette. Does she envy the luxury, or does she see the weight of it all? the invisible shackles wrapped in lace and silk. You pause near the window, letting the light catch the painted flowers on your fan, the delicate shimmer of your earrings. The rain streaks down the glass in soft glistening trails, and the world beyond blurs into a watercolor of muted tones. You feel the faint pull of the corset, the gentle sway of the bustle, the weight of the reticule tugging at your wrist. It's a quiet performance, this moment, an image of ease built on layers of labor. You stand there, a still life in motion, and you wonder how many women across the city are doing the exact same thing, each one caught in her own silent choreography of parasols and fans. The clock ticks on soft and steady, the rain falls, the day hums quietly forward, and you corseted and coiffed parasol in hand, prepare for the next scene in the endless layered performance of Victorian womanhood. You barely have time to settle back into the soft rhythm of the rain, the weight of your accessories gently anchoring you in the moment before the maid returns with a new glimmer in her eye. It's time again to change. Dinner is approaching, and that means the dining dress, a whole new ensemble of layers, lace, and unspoken rules. You sigh, though only softly, because sighing too deeply is impossible in the corset's embrace. The tea gown is lifted away with the same quiet care that put it on, and the next challenge awaits velvet lace and all the trimmings that transform you from a lady of leisure into a vision of evening formality. The dining dress is heavier, there's no getting around that. The fabric, dark and rich, feels like a weighted blanket draped over your shoulders, though comfort is hardly the point. It's usually a deep color navy, burgundy, or black, often trimmed with lace that has been meticulously starched into tiny stubborn scallops. There's a whisper of lavender as the gown settles into place, the faint scent woven into the fabric from sachets hidden in your wardrobe drawers. The bodice is tighter than the tea gowns, hugging your ribs and pressing your waist into the fashionable silhouette of the era. You feel it immediately, the slight strain against your lungs, the awareness that each breath must be measured, delicate, controlled. Historians still argue whether the dining dress's structure was meant to enhance elegance or simply remind women of their physical constraints, a visible symbol of discipline and restraint draped in velvet and lace. The skirt flares wide, sweeping the floor in a gentle arc that whispers with each step. It's trimmed with tassels, perhaps, or intricate beadwork that catches the flicker of candlelight. There's a strange dichotomy in the design. The dress is meant to dazzle the eye, yet you know full well that sitting down in it will be a logistical puzzle. The maid adjusts the sleeves, long and slightly puffed, fastening the tiny pearl buttons at your wrists. You flex your fingers, feeling the gloves now a deeper shade, maybe black, or a dark plum fits snugly over your hands, a quiet armor against the outside world. Your hair, still pinned high and adorned with its ribbons and combs, gets a quick touch-up, an extra pin here, a careful tuck there. A small cluster of silk flowers is added, tucked just above your ear as if you might have plucked them from a midnight garden. And then there's the jewelry, the real showpieces of the evening. The maid lifts a velvet tray lined with gleaming treasures, a heavier necklace this time, perhaps a choker of black velvet with a pendant that catches the light, or a strand of pearls that sits just so against the base of your throat. Earrings larger now dangle with a faint reassuring weight, and maybe a bracelet, thin golden, a quiet circle around your wrist that glints each time you lift your hand. You stand once more before the mirror, a different creature than you were an hour ago. The tea gown's softness has been replaced by something grander, more imposing. The dark fabric swirls around you, the lace catching the light, the jewelry gleaming like tiny stars against the night. Outside, the world has shifted too. The rain has stopped, leaving behind damp streets that shimmer in the glow of gas lamps. The evening light is dim, flickering, casting soft shadows across the walls and floor. You feel the quiet anticipation in the air, the rustle of servants preparing the dining room, the clink of silver being polished, the distant murmur of a clock striking the hour. You know dinner will be its own ritual. Small talk woven between courses, careful posture maintained at the table, and an endless parade of dishes that you must navigate with grace, despite the corset pressing into your ribs and the bustle forcing you to sit at a slightly precarious angle. The dining dress isn't just a garment, it's a statement. It says you belong in this world of candlelit dinners and whispered pleasantries, that you know the difference between a salad fork and a dessert spoon, that you can manage a conversation about the latest political scandal while delicately cutting a slice of pheasant without breaking a sweat. You adjust the fall of the skirt, feeling its weight settle around you like a soft, heavy fog. The bustle shifts as you move, the slight bounce a reminder of the architecture hidden beneath the fabric. You smooth a stray curl behind your ear, catching a glimpse of the silk flowers nestled in your hair, and you allow yourself a faint knowing smile. It's all so much, isn't it? So many layers, so many rules, so many unspoken expectations, and yet here you are navigating it all with the quiet resilience of someone who knows that this is just how the game is played. The dining bell chimes softly in the distance. It's time. You take one last breath, shallow, careful, and glide toward the door skirts, whispering jewelry, glinting parasol left behind for now. The evening awaits, and you, dressed in velvet lace and quiet determination, are ready to face it, one careful, measured step at a time. The dining room glows softly, the flicker of gas lamps catching on polished silverware and the gleaming surfaces of fine china. The air hums with a quiet tension, a subtle symphony of clinking cutlery, the rustle of skirts as guests adjust themselves, and the faint, ever-present aroma of roasted meats, spiced puddings, and stewed vegetables. You enter the room with a careful step, the weight of your dining dress settling around your ankles like a slow-moving tide. The bustle sways gently behind you, a constant subtle reminder of the architecture hidden beneath the layers of fabric. Your corset, as always, holds you in its unyielding embrace, the pressure a quiet background hum that makes each breath a measured, deliberate act. Your hair is still pinned high, adorned with those soft silk flowers, and as you catch your reflection in a polished silver tray, you notice a single wisp of hair has dared to escape an almost rebellious little curl that you smooth back into place with gloved fingers. You take your seat carefully, of course, because sitting in a dining dress is an art form in itself. There's a precise angle to manage. Your spine must remain straight. Your bustle, balance your elbows tucked in and your skirts arranged, just so that they do not awkwardly billow or bunch beneath the table. You perch more than sit, your body held aloft by layers of corset padding and sheer willpower. The first course arrives, perhaps a clear consommé served in delicate bowls, the broth shimmering under the candlelight. You pick up your soup spoon with the correct grip, fingers poised just so, and you guide the spoon carefully to your lips, tasting the warm, savory liquid while keeping your expression composed. After all, a lady does not slurp, nor does she spill, nor does she lean in too closely. She glides delicately and gracefully through the meal, as though floating just above the table itself. You exchange small pleasantries with the gentleman seated to your right, a mild discussion about the weather perhaps, or a passing comment on the Queen's latest appearance in the newspapers. His mustache twitches with polite amusement as you speak, and you wonder if he notices how your corset prevents you from taking a full breath between sentences. Historians still argue whether these dining rituals were designed to reinforce class hierarchies or simply to maintain a veneer of civilization in a world that often teetered on the edge of chaos. After all, beneath the polished silver and the carefully arranged table settings lies a simmering stew of gossip, rivalries, and the occasional under-the-table kick of a shoe. The second course arrives, a roast perhaps, or a delicate fish fillet swimming in a light sauce. You wield your knife and fork with precision, cutting small, manageable bites, chewing quietly, and nodding occasionally to the conversation happening around you. The bustle behind you shifts slightly with each movement, a gentle bounce that makes you acutely aware of how much fabric you're managing just to stay upright. There's a rhythm to it all, the careful lifting of the glass, the measured dab of the napkin, the subtle glance at the tablecloth to ensure no crumbs have fallen. Every motion is calculated, performed with an air of effortless grace, though you know full well is anything but effortless. Your stomach squeezed tightly by the corset begins to murmur its protests. There's only so much room in there after all, and while the dishes are small, the sheer number of them, course after course, means you're performing a delicate dance between hunger and discomfort. You take smaller bites, slower sips, allowing the conversation to stretch and fill the silences while you manage the logistics of eating in a garment designed more for aesthetics than digestion. As the meal progresses, perhaps to a game bird roasted in wine or a pudding heavy with cloves and nutmeg, you find your gaze drifting around the room. The flicker of the gas lamps plays across the faces of the other guests, casting soft shadows that blur the sharp lines of corsets and collars. The women, like you, sit poised in their elaborate gowns, jewels catching the light hair pinned high with careful precision. The men lean slightly forward, elbows inching toward the forbidden, their waistcoats straining against their own version of formal discomfort. You exchange a quiet glance with the lady across the table, a fleeting spark of shared understanding. You both know this is a performance, a dance of etiquette, of appearances, of pretending that the layers of fabric and expectation aren't pressing down on you like a velvet-lined weight. Dessert arrives, a dainty tart perhaps, or a fruit compote served in tiny glass dishes. You pick up your spoon with fingers that ache slightly from the constriction of the gloves and the constant tension of proper posture. The taste is sweet, the flavor a small reward for enduring the constraints of the evening. The final course, a plate of delicate cheeses and nuts, signals the nearing end of the meal. You feel a quiet relief, though. You keep your expression composed, your smile soft and practiced. You know there's still conversation to be had, perhaps a game of cards, perhaps a quiet retreat to the drawing room for more tea and another hour of careful social dance. But for now you sit corseted and adorned in the soft glow of the gaslight, the weight of velvet and lace pressing against you, the bustle a quiet presence beneath the table. You sip the last of your wine and breathe as deeply as the corset allows, and you remind yourself that this too is part of the ritual. You probably won't survive this without a few aching ribs and a headache from the hairpins digging into your scalp, but that's the price of the performance, and tomorrow you'll do it all again. The dinner plates have been cleared, the last crumbs of pudding brushed discreetly from the tablecloth, and you've offered just the right number of smiles, nods, and softly murmured pleasantries. Your hands are slightly stiff from holding the cutlery, just so your shoulders ache faintly from hours of holding perfect posture in your waist. Well, your waist hasn't felt properly relaxed since breakfast. The evening winds down, but not before one final ritual of the hair. It's late now. The gas lamps are dimmed, the fire in the grate has burned low, and the only sounds are the faint creaks of the floorboards and the soft tick of the mantel clock. Your maid appears at your side as if summoned by the slow exhale of the night itself, her arms filled with pins, brushes, and a small jar of hair oil that smells faintly of rose and almond. You sit before the mirror, the image of a lady at the end of a long, carefully orchestrated day. Your hair is still pinned high, though it sags ever so slightly under the weight of the evening's exertions. Tiny wisps have broken free, curling around your temples in soft, frizzy halos. The flowers once so precisely placed now tilt at odd angles, and one of the combs has slipped dangerously low, barely clinging to the braid it was meant to secure. The maid begins her work, her fingers deft and gentle, sliding the pins free one by one. Each pin comes with a soft, satisfying click, a tiny surrender to the undoing of the day's labor. You feel each one as it leaves little pricks of relief, small sighs released from the tangle of your hair. Your scalp is tender, and as the weight of the hair begins to ease, you realize just how much tension you've been holding there. The ache at your temples pulses in time with your heartbeat, a soft, steady throb that feels oddly intimate, like a reminder from your own body that even beauty has its costs. The combs come next, their teeth sliding through the loosened braids with a faint tug. A few strands come away with them clinging to the polished ivory or tortoiseshell, evidence of a day's worth of tension, gravity, and patience. The maid hums softly under her breath as she works the tune, an old folk song you half remember from childhood. It's a gentle lilting thing, a counterpoint to the soft rustle of fabric and the occasional crackle from the dying fire. Your hair is fully down, now a dark, heavy river spilling over your shoulders. You tilt your head slightly, feeling the subtle pull of the roots, the way the strands cascade in loose, lazy waves that fall nearly to your waist. The brush comes out slow, deliberate strokes, the bristles gliding through your hair in long, rhythmic sweeps. The sound is hypnotic, soft bristles against thick strands, a quiet, repetitive swish that matches the slowing of your breath, the gentle release of the day's stiffness. Historians still argue whether this nightly hair ritual was purely practical or whether it served as a form of meditation, a slow, methodical act that calmed the mind and prepared the body for rest. As the brush moves through your hair, you think it's probably both a necessity and a balm, a chore and a comfort. The oil is warmed between the maid's hands, her palms releasing the faint scent of roses and almonds as she smooths it through the ends of your hair. The strands gleam in the dim light, catching the flicker of the dying fire, and for a brief moment you feel almost like yourself again. Not the dressed up, corseted, adorned version presented at the dining table, but the softer, simpler version who sits quietly in the half-light, hair undone breath, slowing eyelids growing heavy. You sigh, a real sigh this time, full and deep, though the corset still won't quite allow you to fill your lungs completely. The maid continues her gentle work, fingers massaging the oil into your scalp, coaxing away the last of the day's tension. There's a peculiar intimacy in the act, this quiet, unspoken care, this tending of hair that has become, over the course of the day, a symbol of beauty, of status, of control. Now it's just hair again, soft, tangled, alive. The pins are gathered into a small porcelain dish, the combs wiped clean, the brush set neatly on the dressing table. The oil glistens faintly in your hair, the scent lingering like a promise of sleep. You close your eyes for a moment, just a moment, and the quietness of the room wraps around you like a shawl. The fire crackles one last time, the clock ticks on, and the world feels very far away. The day is nearly done, but there's one last step before you can truly rest, a nightdress, soft and loose, waiting on the bed, ready to replace the layers of lace and velvet in rigid formality. For now, though, you sit in the stillness, your hair down your breath, soft, your reflection in the mirror a little blurred by the dim light and the long hours. You are almost free. The maid brings the nightdress at last, a soft flowing garment in white cotton, the fabric so light it almost feels like air against your skin. It's simple, with no corset to squeeze your ribs, no bustle to shape your silhouette, no layers to press you into a sculpted form. Just a loose gown, wide at the sleeves, falling in gentle folds from your shoulders to your ankles. You stand quietly as she helps you out of the dining dress, the heavy velvet slipping away in a whisper of fabric. The corset comes next, and oh, the relief. As the laces loosen, you can't help but release a soft, involuntary sigh, the kind that seems to come from deep within your bones. It's as if your lungs expand for the first time all day. stretching gratefully into the empty space that had been so tightly cinched. Your ribs feel tender, a little bruised from the hours of constriction, and you roll your shoulders, feeling the muscles creak like old wood under strain. The chemise is removed too, leaving you standing for a brief, strange moment in the quiet, in nothing but your skin. The mirror catches your reflection, pale, marked faintly by the corset's lines, hair loose and tumbling over your shoulders like a midnight river. For a heartbeat, you feel almost like a child again, unencumbered, unadorned. The nightdress slips over your head, the cotton cool against your skin, and for the first time all day you feel a sense of true freedom. The fabric flows softly with each movement, not clinging, not pinching, not demanding your constant attention. It's just there, simple, clean, and quiet. You move to the bed, the mattress sagging a little under your weight, and the maid helps arrange the blankets, a thin sheet, a woolen blanket, and perhaps a heavier quilt, folded at the foot in case the night turns chilly. The faint scent of lavender lingers in the linens, a subtle comfort woven into the fabric. The room is dim now, lit only by the low glow of the fireplace and the flickering shadows it casts on the wallpaper. The clock ticks softly in the background, a steady, gentle rhythm that feels almost like a heartbeat. The fire pops once, a quiet crackle in the otherwise still air. Your maid steps back, murmuring a quiet good night before slipping out, leaving you alone in the hush of the evening. You sink into the bed, the softness of the mattress wrapping around you like a cocoon, and for a moment you simply exist. No corset, no bustle, no gloves or pins or parasols. Just you, the soft rustle of cotton as you shift slightly, the faint creak of the bed frame, and the slow, measured sound of your own breathing. Historians still argue whether Victorian women saw these nightly rituals as a release, a quiet undoing of the day's performance, or simply another expectation, a final step in a long list of duties before sleep. You're not sure it matters. What matters now is the sensation of your body easing into stillness, the gradual unwinding of every muscle, every thought, every tension. Your mind drifts, tracing the shape of the day, the cold splash of water in the morning, the tug of corset laces, the weight of the bustle, the faint ache in your feet after standing too long, the quiet pride in looking composed, the small rebellions, a loosened ribbon here, a crooked hairpin there, that let you feel human even in the midst of so many expectations. You feel the edges of sleep tugging at you, soft and insistent. Your breath slows, deepens your body, sinking into the mattress, the quilt pulling up to meet you like an old friend. The fire fades, the clock ticks on, and the world outside grows quiet. Tomorrow it will all begin again, the laces, the layers, the careful choreography of appearance and expectation. But for now, in this moment, you are free. You close your eyes, a final exhale leaving your lips like a whispered secret, and the night wraps you in its quiet, heavy embrace. Let it all go now. The corset's tight grip, the bustle's gentle sway, the soft weight of jewelry resting against your skin. Imagine the fabric loosening, the laces falling away, the hairpins slipping out one by one, until your hair spills freely, curling softly over your shoulders. The rain has stopped outside. The streets glisten faintly under the moonlight, and the world has slowed to a quiet hum. The soft tick of the clock fades into the background, the fire in the grate's a warm glow that melts into the edges of your mind. Feel the softness of the nightdress against your skin, the lightness of the cotton as it moves with you. There's no more weight now, no more velvet, no more lace, no more careful steps across polished floors. Just the hush of the room, the warmth of the blankets tucked around you, the quiet whisper of the night air moving gently through the curtains. Breathe in slowly, deeply, as far as the corset would never allow. Let your ribs stretch, let your shoulders fall. Let your breath ease into a soft, steady rhythm. Tomorrow will come with its own rituals, its own layers and performances, but For now, it's just you, the softness of the bed, the quiet of the night, and the slow, easy drift into sleep. Let your mind wander, let the details blur and fade, and allow yourself to slip beneath the surface of wakefulness into the warm, gentle pull of dreams. Good night.